At this very moment, a complex and sophisticated dialogue is unfolding within the boundaries of your backyard. This is not a conversation between you and the local wildlife, nor is it a whimsical exchange of melodies meant for human ears. You are not a participant in this discourse, and you never have been. However, you are undeniably the primary subject of it. Every time you step across your threshold, every time you replenish the seed in a hanging feeder, and every time you sit quietly on your porch to observe the rising sun, the birds surrounding you are engaged in a detailed discussion about your presence. They communicate in a language so specific, so multi-layered, and so intentional that dedicated researchers have spent decades attempting to decode even the most basic elements of its structure. There is a profound realization that will stay with you long after today. These birds are not merely communicating with their immediate neighbors within your property line. The data they are sharing, details regarding your identity, your perceived level of threat, and whether you can be classified as a trustworthy entity, has already traveled far beyond the edges of your yard. This information moves through an invisible network to birds you have never encountered, in gardens you have never stepped foot in, and to entire flocks that have already formed a definitive opinion of you without ever having laid eyes on you. In the avian world, you possess a reputation. It is a social standing that has been meticulously constructed over time, though you were likely entirely unaware of its existence until now. Welcome back to the channel. If you are joining us for the first time, I encourage you to subscribe before you move on, because our focus here is the hidden layer of existence, those intricate phenomena occurring just beyond the periphery of average human perception. Today, we are going to venture deep into the secret language of your backyard birds. We will decode the mechanics of what they are actually saying, the methods they use to convey information, the specific audiences they address, and, perhaps most significantly, the things they have already broadcasted about you. I urge you to stay with us until the very end, as our final topic involves a paradigm shift that will permanently alter how you perceive the sounds of your environment. Once you understand this final piece of the puzzle, the soundscape of your yard will be forever transformed. To the casual observer, bird vocalizations are often dismissed as mere background noise, a pleasant, natural ambiance consisting of morning chirps, melodic songs from the canopy, or the occasional frantic alarm when a neighborhood cat wanders into view. This interpretation, while common, is fundamentally incorrect. What you are actually traversing every time you step outside is an active, dynamic, and real-time communication network. This system functions as a high-speed data stream, carrying specific information about individual actors, including you, across your entire neighborhood simultaneously. Birds do not vocalize at random. Their songs and calls are not aimless expressions of biological impulse. Every sound produced by a bird carries a payload of information, and the surrounding ecosystem, not just members of their own species, but dozens of other species as well, is constantly listening, decoding, and responding to that data in real time. Ornithologists and behavioral ecologists refer to this phenomenon as interspecies eavesdropping. It represents one of the most sophisticated and efficient communication systems found in the natural world. To understand how this functions in your specific environment, consider the black-capped chickadee. This species is one of the most rigorously studied birds in North America, and for good reason. A chickadee does not simply emit a generic alarm call. It utilizes a complex family of vocalizations that encode precise data about the nature of a detected threat. The famous chickadee-dee-dee call is not a static phrase. The number of D notes appended to the end of the call serves as a sophisticated threat assessment. A low-threat predator, such as a large, relatively slow-moving great horned owl or a red-tailed hawk, predators that pose little danger to a small, agile songbird, typically triggers a call with only 2 or 3 D notes. However, a high-threat predator, such as a small, incredibly fast raptor like a sharp-shinned hawk or a merlin, which possesses the maneuverability to actually hunt and catch a chickadee in flight, will elicit a much more urgent response. In these instances, the chickadee will produce 4, 5, 6, or even more D notes in rapid staccato succession.
Researchers at the University of Montana confirmed this through a series of controlled, elegant experiments. By presenting wild chickadee flocks with taxidermy mounts of various predator species and playing recorded calls, they measured the D count in the birds' responses. The results were remarkably consistent and mathematically precise. The chickadee is not merely shouting danger, it is providing a detailed briefing on the type of danger, the severity of the risk, and the appropriate defensive posture its neighbors should adopt. Because this information is vital for survival, every bird within earshot, including nuthatches, titmice, vireos, and warblers, has evolved to understand exactly what those notes mean. They are all tuned into the same frequency, practicing a form of cross-species intelligence gathering.
Now, we must consider your role in this network. You are not a natural predator in the traditional sense. You are not a hawk or a feline. However, you are a variable. In the avian world, unknown variables are approached with extreme caution until they are proven to be benign. The very first time a bird encounters you, whether you are walking through the yard, refilling a feeder, or simply sitting on your porch, it makes a vocalization. That call ripples through the air. Other birds hear it and they immediately adjust their behavior. They begin to observe you from the safety of the foliage, initiating their own independent assessments. What happens next is determined entirely by your conduct. If your movements are unpredictable, if you make sudden gestures, produce loud noises, or approach a feeding station with aggressive speed, the alarm network is activated. High-intensity calls are broadcast, and the birds instinctively retreat. The feeders empty in a heartbeat. This collective withdrawal is itself a powerful signal that travels to every bird within range. The message is clear. There is something erratic and potentially dangerous about this human. Maintain a safe distance. Conversely, if you move with calm intentionality, if you approach the feeder slowly, replenish the seed, and then retreat without lingering in a way that feels predatory, a different set of signals is sent. If you sit quietly and allow the birds to approach you rather than forcing an interaction, the alarm calls subside. In their place, you will hear contact calls, soft, conversational chips and seeps that essentially mean, I am here, I am safe, and the status quo is maintained. These quiet, unremarkable sounds are just as informative as the loud alarms. They are the bird's way of reporting to the network that this specific human is safe. Dr. Christopher Templeton at Pacific University has spent years documenting these acoustic nuances. His research found that birds familiar with a specific human, such as a researcher who visited a site consistently and calmly for several weeks, generated measurably different acoustic responses than they did for strangers. The familiar safe human triggered lower D counts, shorter call sequences, and a much faster return to normal foraging behavior. Essentially, the birds had developed a vocal file on that specific person, and they broadcasted that file every time the person appeared. You too have a file in your neighborhood's avian database. Perhaps the most startling aspect of this discovery is that the birds in your yard are not the only ones who possess this information. Bird communication travels through two distinct channels. The first is real-time acoustic transmission, where calls carry across hundreds of feet of open air to be intercepted by any bird within range. The second, and perhaps more fascinating, is social learning. This is a process where information is passed across time and generations. Younger birds and neighboring individuals observe the behavioral responses of those around them and adopt those responses as their own. This phenomenon has been most rigorously documented in members of the corvid family, specifically crows. Pioneering research at the University of Washington demonstrated that when a crow identifies a specific human face as a threat, that information does not remain isolated within that single bird's memory. It spreads. Through a process researchers call cultural transmission of social information, crows who had never personally encountered a threatening researcher began to mob that individual on sight. They had been told by their peers that this specific face was dangerous, and they remembered it. While crows are famous for their intelligence, the alarm call network in your backyard operates on the same fundamental principle, often at a much faster pace.
When a chickadee sounds a high urgency alarm in your yard, every bird that hears it, not just in your yard, but in the neighbor's yard and the one beyond that, adjusts its behavior. The ripple effect of a single call can saturate an entire neighborhood in seconds. This means that if you have established a reputation for being calm, consistent, and trustworthy, the birds 3 houses away may already be predisposed to trust you, even if they have never seen you before. The acoustic portrait of your character has preceded your arrival. To help you engage with this world, I want to provide you with a practical guide to the sounds you might hear tomorrow morning. When you step outside, I want you to pause. Do not move immediately toward your destination. Stand still and listen for these specific vocalizations. First, listen for the sharp chip call. This is a brief, high-pitched note produced by many songbirds, including cardinals, warblers, and sparrows. When this occurs as you appear, it is a watch call. It translates to, "An event has occurred. I am monitoring the situation." If the chipping stops within 30 seconds and is not repeated, it is a positive sign. The bird has assessed you, determined you are not a threat, and returned to its business. Second, be aware of the seat call. This is a very thin, extremely high-pitched sound, almost like a whistle at the edge of human hearing. It is a true alarm call, used when a bird perceives an immediate and grave danger. Interestingly, the seat call is evolutionarily designed to be difficult to locate. Because the sound is so high frequency, it does not wrap around objects well, making it hard for a predator to triangulate the source of the sound. If you hear this when you walk outside, you have startled a bird significantly. You have, in effect, broadcast your presence as a high-level threat to every living thing in the vicinity. Third is the contact chip. These are softer, lower-intensity sounds, often repeated at irregular intervals while a bird is foraging. This is the sound of a relaxed animal in a secure environment. If the birds around you are producing these soft, conversational notes, it is a sign of acceptance. The yard is saying, "You are a known entity. You belong here." Fourth is the mobbing call. This is loud, harsh, and repetitive. It often involves multiple species joining together in a cacophony of aggression. This is a public emergency broadcast, a coordinated effort to harass a predator and alert the entire neighborhood to its exact location. If you see small birds dive bombing a larger bird or a cat, you are witnessing this in action. If this call is ever directed at a human, it is usually because that individual has a history of harassing or threatening the local bird population. This information is persistent and can last for years in the local avian memory. Finally, there is the most coveted sound of all, the alarm call that never happens. This is the meaningful silence of a bird that simply carries on with its life despite your presence. The feeders remain busy, the contact calls continue, and no one flushes into the trees. This lack of a reaction is the ultimate compliment. It signifies that your reputation is impeccable. You are no longer a variable to be tracked. You have become a fixture of the landscape. It is important to remember that your reputation in the bird world is not static. It is a dynamic, living profile that updates constantly based on new data. This means that a damaged reputation can be rebuilt, and a good one can be lost. The quickest way to damage your standing is through unpredictability. Erratic schedules, sudden movements near feeding stations, or allowing a domestic cat to patrol the area will all send negative signals through the network. These actions update your file in a way that increases the D count of the calls made when you appear. Conversely, the most effective way to build a positive reputation is through radical consistency. If you show up at the same time each day, move with the same deliberate pace, and allow the birds to dictate the distance of the interaction, you will eventually earn their trust. There is a phenomenon that experienced naturalists and birders call going invisible. This is not about literal camouflage. It is the point at which you have been still and quiet for so long that the birds stop registering you as a presence that requires active monitoring. When you reach this state, the birds will begin to carry on their lives inches away from you.
A chickadee might land on a branch just a few feet from your face, or a cardinal might hop along the ground near your feet. They do this not because they are unaware of you, but because they have processed all the available data and concluded that you do not require their attention. This is the highest form of trust an animal can offer. And the moment it happens, the birds announce it to the rest of the neighborhood through those soft, easy contact calls. They tell the world that you are safe, and the world listens.